Imagine for a moment, you're in a room full of people, but your mind seems to be on another planet. Everyone is talking, but you can't concentrate. Sound familiar? Maybe you've questioned whether something is wrong with you. But what if I told you that this feeling could actually be a disguised superpower? This is the fascinating story of Gabor Maté, a Hungarian physician who revolutionized our understanding of ADHD. Unlike conventional experts, he doesn't see this diagnosis as a disease, but as an intelligent response of our nervous system. To him, it's not a defective brain, but a mind that has learned how to protect itself. Maté's journey began dramatically. Born in Budapest during the horrors of World War II, he was torn from his mother's arms as a baby to escape Nazi persecution. Months later, when they were finally reunited, something fundamental had changed within him. It wasn't a conscious choice, it was pure survival. And it's exactly here that his revolutionary theory on ADHD comes to life. According to Maté, what we call a disorder is, in reality, a brilliant strategy developed by the child's mind. When the environment becomes too toxic, when emotional safety is missing, when chaos dominates the home, the child develops a special ability, the power to mentally escape. It's not genetic, it's pure adaptation. Think about it. How many children labeled as problematic or hyperactive are simply trying to survive emotionally? Over years of medical practice, Maté identified an impressive pattern. Virtually all adults with ADHD he treated carried stories of childhood marked by emotional neglect, family instability, or trauma. Their brains didn't grow in peace. They grew in a permanent state of alert. The result? A nervous system programmed to detect non-existent dangers, a mind that jumps from idea to idea as a defense mechanism, a body unable to relax because it learned that stopping meant vulnerability. Even in safety, they keep running. But here comes the plot twist. At age 50, Maté discovered he himself had ADHD. Suddenly, his whole life made sense. The chronic restlessness, the constant need for stimulation, the difficulty being present. Instead of victimizing himself or seeking a miracle cure, he did something extraordinary. He chose to deeply understand himself. And from that understanding, a new way of seeing the diagnosis was born. To Maté, receiving an ADHD diagnosis isn't the end. It's the beginning of a journey of self-knowledge. It's an invitation to listen to what your body is trying to communicate, to welcome your pain, and decode the message behind each symptom. This leads us to a transformative question. What if what we label as a flaw is actually an intelligent response from a sensitive mind trying to survive in an unbearable world? Maté's approach directly challenges the traditional medical model. While conventional medicine looks for the origin of ADHD in genes or brain defects, he points to something much deeper. Our life experiences, especially in our early years when the brain is forming and absorbing everything, including suffering. Traditional medicine rushes to medicate, classify, and control. Maté questions this system, showing the direct connection between unprocessed childhood emotional trauma and the behavioral patterns we carry into adulthood. To truly understand ADHD, he argues, we need to look beyond the brain. We need to investigate the personal history, family environment, and the experiences that person had to endure alone. Over decades, Maté developed a methodology based on compassion. Instead of trying to fix the person, he helps them understand why their mind reacts in a certain way. And this change in perspective transforms everything. Imagine a child growing up in a home where affection is scarce and conflict is constant. For that child, mentally disconnecting may be the only way to preserve their sanity. Ignoring reality becomes a matter of survival. They grow into an adult with ADHD, but healthcare professionals focus only on the visible symptoms: impulsivity, inattention, procrastination. They fail to see the deep pain that fuels these behaviors. When this pain is neglected, it finds other ways to express itself. Through compulsions, addictions, panic attacks, or destructive relationships. Maté emphasizes that ADHD rarely appears alone. It's usually part of a broader pattern of unrecognized emotional suffering. He believes that our mind is constantly trying to protect us, even if it means resorting to agitation, mental escape, or emotional isolation. What once saved the child may, over time, start to limit the adult. But he shows us that hope exists, and it begins with listening to our body, to our pain, to the inner child who is never truly welcomed. Mate's path doesn't promise instant results or simple solutions, but it offers something much more valuable: depth and authenticity. He doesn't sell magical formulas, but shows that it's possible to transform suffering into wisdom, pain into personal growth, and isolation into genuine connection. Maybe that's exactly what we need to understand. ADHD is not a life sentence, but a chapter in our personal story, a story that can be rewritten with courage and determination. But this rewriting requires courage to look inward, to face painful memories, and to revisit emotional territories we've avoided for years. Many people with ADHD carry deep shame for not fitting into societal norms, constantly apologizing for not being like the majority. Mate proposes an internal revolution. What if we replace shame with self-compassion? What if we traded judgment for understanding? Real transformation begins at exactly this point, when we stop fighting our own nature and begin to listen to our story with empathy. ADHD stops being our enemy and becomes our guide. It points us toward aspects of ourselves that still need love, care, and reconnection. It is in this moment of genuine listening that true freedom begins to blossom. Mate has the courage to talk about something many professionals avoid. Our society has a deeply distorted approach to mental suffering. We live in a culture obsessed with quick diagnoses, convenient labels, and immediate medication, but that refuses to investigate the deep roots of symptoms. Restless children are quickly labeled as problematic and often medicated before they even learn to identify and name their emotions. Adults with this diagnosis remain trapped in cycles of frustration and dependency, never given the opportunity to explore the true roots of their behaviors. For Mate, this goes far beyond a simple medical mistake. It is the reflection of an emotionally ill society. He states categorically that ADHD and many other mental disorders are, in reality, creative adaptations developed by the mind and body to survive in emotionally toxic environments. His summarizing phrase is direct and impactful. We are not sick because we have disorders. We have disorders because we live in a sick society. Just look at the world today. A society that prioritizes productivity over well-being, that demands maximum efficiency but offers minimal space for rest, affection, or authentic connection. Children grow up immersed in screens, with overwhelmed parents, in an ultra-competitive educational system, and a culture that teaches, from an early age, to suppress emotions. In this chaotic scenario, where is the space for genuine emotional care? Where is true listening? Where is empathy? Mate expands his analysis beyond the individual and suggests that ADHD is a collective symptom, a mirror reflecting the fundamental problems in how we structure our relationships, manage our time, and define our priorities. He argues that the exponential rise in diagnoses doesn't mean we're sicker, but rather that we're more overloaded, more isolated, and more pressured by a world that completely disrespects the natural human rhythm. In this context, people with ADHD are seen as defective, when in fact they may be the most sensitive indicators of a culture in emotional collapse. The real problem is not in them, but in the environment that marginalizes them. Mate's proposal is truly revolutionary. Instead of forcing people to mold themselves to the system, we need to transform the system to embrace people as they really are. This demands a new kind of listening, deeper, more human, and free from prejudice. A listening that doesn't ask, "What's your problem?" but instead, "What have you been through?" This simple shift in approach has transformative power. It creates space for silent stories to come to light, narratives of abandonment, neglect, loneliness, and emotional confusion. Stories that, once finally told, create space for new narratives, new beginnings, and healthier reconstructions. To Mate, ADHD is not a disorder that needs to be silenced. It's a message that needs to be heard. It's an opportunity to reclaim what was lost. Our capacity to feel deeply, to connect authentically, and to be whole. Instead of seeing ADHD as an obstacle, he invites us to see it as an opportunity for deep transformation, a call to reconnect with our essence, our history, and most importantly, with each other. Because in the end, true healing is born from the meeting of two human beings willing to truly listen to one another. For many people, living with ADHD is like being trapped in a permanent mental hurricane. The mind never rests, thoughts crash against each other, emotions rise in overwhelming and uncontrollable waves. There are moments of clarity, it's true, but they quickly vanish, replaced by new ideas, new urgencies, new distractions. This is not just a technical description, it's the daily reality lived by Gabor Maté. In his most intimate accounts, he reveals how, even in the most ordinary situations, his mind transports him away, as if constantly trying to escape the present moment. He forgets important appointments, loses track of conversations, feels emotionally drained. But the difference lies not in what he experiences, but in how he chose to deal with these experiences. Instead of fighting his own mind, he decided to know it intimately. Instead of rejecting his impulses, he began to observe them with curiosity. And from this new attitude, paths emerge for living with greater presence. One of these strategies is the practice of mindfulness, meditation, moments of silence, conscious breathing. For someone with ADHD, developing presence is like exercising a muscle that has remained inactive for years. It's not easy and it's not always comfortable, but it's absolutely possible. Mate believes that, in a modern world, slowing down has become almost an act of rebellion. And that's precisely why it is essential. He insists that we must stop this constant rush, return to the present, and relearn how to be present, not just mentally but also emotionally. At this point, his vision reaches even greater depth, because it transcends the symptoms and speaks of purpose. It touches on the existential emptiness that many people with ADHD carry, a nameless void that manifests as a relentless search, a persistent sense that something essential is always missing. This feeling triggers impulsive behaviors, addictions, self-destructive patterns, chaotic relationships, overworking, all in a desperate attempt to fill an inner hole. A hole that, according to Mate, didn't appear by chance. It is the direct reflection of everything that was absent: lack of genuine affection, lack of emotional security, lack of someone who would say, "I see you. It's okay to be exactly who you are." When this fundamental connection is broken in childhood, we develop defense mechanisms. We disconnect from essential parts of ourselves in order to survive. But over time, those defenses turn into walls that isolate us from our own essence. The hyperactive mind that once protected us from chaos now prevents us from finding peace. The body, conditioned to flee, has lost the ability to relax. And the soul, which only wanted to be heard, remains silent. That's why Mate emphasizes the importance of reconnection with our body, our emotions, our personal history, and with others. He suggests practical lifestyle changes, prioritizing self-care, eating mindfully, getting restorative sleep, reducing digital overstimulation, and above all, cultivating authentic relationships. Relationships where we can truly be ourselves without wearing masks. Because it is in real human connection that we rediscover parts of ourselves that were lost. In this process of reconnection, ADHD stops being a limiting label and becomes non-invitation. Non-invitation to listen to what lies behind the constant rush, to understand what fuels our restlessness, to welcome the chaos with kindness. Instead of trying to eliminate the symptoms at any cost, Mate invites us to listen to them, to treat them as important signals, as messages from our body and soul. And when we do that, something fundamental begins to shift. Because when we truly listen, we discover that what our mind seeks isn't strict control, it's loving care. It's not harsh discipline, it's compassion. It's not correction, it's connection. We've arrived at the deepest core of this journey, and it's here that Gabor Maté's central question reveals its full intensity. What inside me is still asking to be heard? This is not a superficial question. It carries generations of silence, decades of pain, layers and layers of emotional protection. And paradoxically, it is a liberating question because it reminds us that what we label as a disorder may actually be a cry for help, a cry our body and mind made in the past when there was no other way to bear the pain. Most people with ADHD spend their entire lives trying to adapt, trying to fit into molds that were never made for them, trying to be organized, focused, quiet, and productive according to society's expectations. But the more they try to fit in, the further they drift from their true essence. Then come the frustration, the guilt, and the relentless self-criticism. Gabor Maté shows us that there is no alternative, a path where healing is not a final destination, but a continuous process of reconnection. Reconnection with who we really are, with what we genuinely feel, with what we've lived. He reminds us that our restless mind, our difficulty concentrating, our impulsiveness are not flaws. They're legitimate responses to a world that has often been too hostile, too fast, too insensitive. When we begin to understand this, something fundamental changes within us. We stop seeing ourselves as broken people and start recognizing ourselves as survivors. And that shift in perspective is deeply transformative. It brings self-compassion, it brings dignity, it invites us to look inward with more tenderness and less harshness. The essence of this story is simple yet powerful. ADHD is not a mistake of nature. It is not an intelligent attempt by our body and mind to protect us. And instead of fighting it, we can learn to listen with love, with patience, with full presence. Because the more we listen to ourselves, the more we understand. And the more we understand, the more we free ourselves. We don't need to be fixed. We need to be embraced. Gabor Maté doesn't offer miracle cures, but he offers something infinitely more valuable. The possibility of rebuilding our relationship with ourselves, the opportunity to transform pain into wisdom, chaos into awareness, isolation into presence. If you've read this far, it's because something in this message has stirred something within you. Maybe you live with ADHD. Maybe you love someone who does. Regardless of the situation, know that you are not alone. There is a path, and it begins now. One step at a time, with courage, with listening, with love. May Gabor Maté's journey inspire you to look at your own with more gentleness. May you remember daily that it's possible to rebuild yourself, even when everything feels chaotic, because there is strength in you. There is wisdom, there is life, and there is infinite possibility. Thank you for being here with us. Please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next publications.